Good day and welcome again to yet another edition of COVID-19. What is the reality behind what's going on? Again, we welcome to our microphones and our television screen, Zoom, if you may, Dr. Roger Hunter. Roger Hunter, the last time we spoke, we had a situation where things are even locked down tighter. There's been some easing as it relates to some schools, etc., and looking at how churches meet and perhaps even sports getting a bigger break and a forensic look, if you may, at the entertainment world. What say you of some of the changes you've seen before we get into the whole issue of the vaccination? Just your feedback to where we are in Jamaica.
You know, what brings to mind is that saying, if you can fool me once, but you can't fool me twice. We missed an opportunity by being extremely cautious. However, not to sound, too negative, I welcome the long-awaited progress, the long-awaited opening up or quasi-opening up of the economy, because the consequences of the lockdown to the economy, those consequences have been severe. They're like fertilizer, as Dr. Orville Taylor announced. But I think even he will be surprised to see how quick this fertilizer is actually working. 650% increase in murders in West Kingston. The SMO at KPH practically in tears. Or 9 gunshot wounds over one weekend. Every single swab, cotton swab, used up. These are swabs that you use to help to stop bleeding or to do dressing. Every one of them used up by 7 a.m. the next morning from 9 gunshot wounds. I have an estimate. I was told over 150 Jamaicans have been murdered. And it's kind of disheartening to me, because to my mind, the policy mediated or the policy driven by the last government into this current government is one of hysteria, one of timidity, one which should have been more bold. But no, unfortunately, because of these protocol driven measures, we are faced with a manure, a fertilizer that is even causing the minister of national security to practically cry on national television
But
when he
wouldn't
sees what's
one
happening to
say
Montego Bay.
But wouldn't one say that the crime rate that created Zozo and Soso and whatever also has been around? We have been living with that diet of crime. Would you attribute
Right.
that more to the fertilizer that has eked up
No,
our challenges?
no. Unfortunately, so you have an epidemic which has been running chronically in the background, right? So there's an epidemic for sure. Over 1,000 dead per year is clearly not acceptable. We shouldn't even have 500 dead. But what emerged was a constitutional challenge to the crude methods, the blunt methods that the government was using to control crime. And the methods that we're talking about was the SOEs, the state of emergencies in selected areas. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you see it, the SOEs are gone. So those who were corralled, whose rights were further restrained besides COVID, were released back into society. And I think it would be safe to say some of them are violence producers. So they are now back into a situation where there's hardship, there's pure economic hardship. They can't go and work on a construction site. If they were working before, their job is now gone. Tourism is down. We've had hotels 2 winter seasons in a row with 8% occupancy. This is a very powerful manure. So what we're seeing is a spike, Michael, a true spike. We're not talking about a created spike, a true spike in murders, a true epidemiologically proven, easily demonstrable spike in murders in Jamaica as a consequence of the dire hardships that the people of Jamaica are going through. The inner city, the low people who have the lowest wages, They are suffering tremendously under this severe pressure. 200,000 people have lost their jobs. 400,000 have been half employed. Jamaica can no longer pay our way. We can't pay our wage bill. We have gone from the stock exchange as number one, from the first to the worst. We've moved our stock exchange from the first in the world to the worst in the world over a winter virus in a country that is hot all year round. The coronavirus was never new. You could call to what the new strain, you're going to call them novel, novel 2, novel 3, novel 4, novel 5. The coronavirus is always a virus that plunders winter lands, and it is playing out as we speak. Yes, we will get the coronavirus infection in Jamaica, as we always did in 1995, in 1990, in 2000, in 2015. And yes, those particular strains, perhaps people could come to work, have a dry cough, and still come to work. This particular strain is a bit more severe in Jamaica, but not extremely severe. For the majority of Jamaicans, this is either asymptomatic disease or mild disease. In fact, from the Zoom conference that I just came from, they're saying that people should avoid being in the hospital. They should stay at home because the hospitals can't take the pressure anymore. They're overwhelmed. One point that I had made, and I think it's an important point to make it again at this stage, every household in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, and I dare say the entire world, because the world is watching, every household, the new norm should be a thermometer, a contactless infrared thermometer, a digital blood pressure machine. Make sure you take the batteries out of them if you're not going to take your blood pressure every day. And also a pulse oximeter, oxygen saturation meter, an oxygen saturation meter. I remember giving a conference about 8 years ago when the MAJ allowed me to talk at those times. And I said, every general practitioner should have a pulse oximeter in his office. I've been having non-contact thermometers in my practice for well over 8-9 years. So I'm now saying to the households of the world, not just Jamaica, but the entire world, that you should have a pulse oximeter in your home. You should have a digital blood pressure meter in your home, one with adult and one with pediatric cuffs. You should also have a contactless thermometer in your home. If you have a diabetic in your home, you should also have a diabetic meter, a glucometer, and make sure that the strips are kept in date. But coming back to the pulse oximeter, because it's certainly related to a conversation around COVID, anybody who has a pulse oximeter, the oxygen saturation reading on that meter should be 95 and above. Anybody with a pulse oximeter saturation that's falling below 92, 91 should make their way quickly to their general practitioner, who I salute the general practitioners because they are the true frontline for COVID in Jamaica as they speak, in the constant community spread. But also they should go to the accident emergency departments of the various hospitals around, the government ones and the private ones. But the general practitioner should be able to know the oxygen saturation reading of patients who have a respiratory symptom. And the other thing to bear in mind, coronavirus comes with a lot of hysteria. There's hysteria for the disease, and there's a hysteria for the vaccine. So when you're hysterical, you feel like you're short of breath, you feel like you're dying, a feeling of impending doom, this irrational feeling of impending doom. There's a lot of hysteria surrounding coronavirus. Just a suggestion that you are coronavirus positive could result in your life being at risk. The hysteria makes you short of breath or feel short of breath and hyperventilate. If you put the pulse oximeter on somebody who is having a hysterical response, guess what? You're getting 100% saturation reading, which is the maximum it can get. 99% reading, 98% reading. That immediately draws the family that be calm. Let's be calm here. Just breathe through a bag. Calm down. Calm down. You do not have COVID. Keep calm. Resist the elephants in the room. We do not have COVID. So I remember the chief medical officer intimating in one of her Zoom meeting is that if people believe that they should have a pulse oximeter in their homes, then those people should really being in a hospital. Well, that's totally a misstatement. Now it is clear every single home in the world should have a pulse oximeter in their home. And I've had in my home for over 10 years pulse oximeter readings. These are extremely important, especially with Jamaica, with our pool of people who are asthmatics. At the Zoom conference, Dr. Althea Carr echoed that we should all have pulse oximeters in our homes. She is perhaps the foremost or one of the foremost or amongst the best pulmonary specialists in Jamaica. And so what we should say, we should have pulse oximeters in our homes. The costs are not prohibitive by and large. They're about equivalent of about 18 US dollars, 20 US dollars maximum for the finger pulse oximeter. You can put it on the side of the finger like I'm showing you here. If for instance, you have a lot of nail polish and you don't want to interfere with your nail polish, you can clip the pulse oximeter at the side of your finger. You can, of course, you can remove the nail polish, or you can put it on your toes, or you can put it on your ears, or you can put it, in several other locations, which are important, so you can get that figure. What is the pulse oximeter? But what's the oxygen saturation rather? But remember the oxygen saturation.
Remind us of the figure we should.
I will remind you, it is important. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for asking that question. If you have an oxygen saturation of 95% or higher, then you are not in imminent danger. Now, if it is that you're 100 and you have suddenly fallen, you had it on your finger, and it's fallen from 100 to 97 to 95, then that could be significant because it is actually falling. And you can reasonably expect that it will not stay at 95, it will fall further. But in baseline, as you put it on, if your initial reading is about 95, you then ask the person to take some deep breaths in, take about 3 deep breaths in and let it out. You'll see the oxygen saturation rising to 97, 98% or 100%. Every sporting event, bar none, must have a pulse oximeter, an oxygen saturation meter at that event. Every household in Jamaica should have an oxygen saturation meter inside their household. Every doctor's practice, every GP practice, every nurse practitioner practice, every government health center should have in every consulting room an oxygen saturation meter so that you can quickly tell what is the oxygen saturation result for a person who is, for instance, having a heart attack or having a blood clot or having a hysterical response or an asthmatic response or possibly having COVID or coronavirus or any other respiratory illness. So an oxygen saturation result of 95 or higher going in that direction is okay. If you put it on initially and it's 90 and it's taking the time to stabilize and you see it go up to 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 100, not a problem. Also, there are little nuances as well. In darker skin, you can have, false, more difficult readings. That's why you should put it on the side, put the side of the finger. Patients who are severely anemic, you can have some interference with the reading as well. And of course, you spoke of the acrylic, the nail polish, which can interfere because it really should fit on the nail bed.
Yes.
Right. I want to emphasize that people, if you don't use your pulse oximeter every day, which is likely, most people will not use it, please remove the battery out of the machine, because just like toys, the batteries will leak onto the machine and burn and destroy the circuit. But it is an essential tool in the new norm for 2021 that every single household must have a pulse oximeter. They should also have a digital blood pressure machine, and they should also have a temperature machine to measure temperatures in a contactless way. The one that, you know, people see pointing at themselves. You know, we should all have it. Every household should have it, bar none. But then
Might I
we
ask?
have a crashed economy, so that people have needs, and
Yes.
so aspiration is not necessarily something that we can
Yes.
we can see.
Might
we
I?
can realize.
You did mention the cost might not be prohibitive, but because I feel as if I'm getting a little gem of information here, I want to pursue it. What is the
Yes.
kind of a cost that we might expect to get one of these pulse machine that will test your oxygen saturation?
Your oxygen saturation meter. Again, I had alluded to earlier. It should be in the region of $2,000-3,000 Jamaican dollars. It can be easily had on Amazon, eBay. I'm not advertising these companies in any way, shape, or form, but a lot of people do shop online, and you can get them at local Jamaica hospital supplies. I suppose you have other companies like Surgix that will easily be able to get these for you if you need it. Companies like CardioMed that specializes in the heart and everything cardiovascular, they will be able to get this thing for you as well. And you know, and also a company that I'm associated with called Metras does also supply oxygen saturation meter, but that's not the ethos, the focus of Metras, the company that I am involved with.
Yes, and you have declared interest, and that's fine.
Yes, I have to. It's transparency. You have to be transparent. You have to be transparent.
You know, because normally it's when you go to the hospital that you get this thing stuck on your finger. But you're saying you can take this home, just as number of us have the glucose machine, the blood pressure one,
temperature one, thermometer.
I don't think it could hurt.
We of course it doesn't hurt. It helps. It helps the health sector. It helps because, you know, I was speaking to a friend of mine. She told me that she had, you know, there's a principal of one of the greatest institutions in Jamaica, one of the greatest high schools in Jamaica. And she was telling me that her 90-year-old mother, you know, she had some difficulty in the night at 2 o'clock in the morning. She simply put on, she says, a principal, you know, she's not a doctor, she's not a nurse, she has no medical training whatsoever. She simply put on the oxygen saturation meter on her mother's finger, and she got a reading of 90, 95, 96, 97, thereabout. And it reassured her there was no need to drag this 90-year-old lady, I don't say drag, but, you know, take her out of her home to go to a private hospital, A&E, or a government hospital, A&E. In fact, that could make her condition worse. Many people have died in the parking lots of some of the more popular private hospitals. They've died waiting. They've died going back to check if they have, if their wallet is available. They've gone, checked back for the card, and they died of a heart attack. So a pulse oximeter is a crucial piece of equipment that every single household should have in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, in the entire world. That is what should be mass produced and be reliably checked. And remember to take out the batteries if you're not going to use it regularly, and or do a battery check on it.
I dare say, Doc,
95 and above is a good target. And it can be used on children. It can be used on babies. Sometimes babies are crying and you don't know if they aspirate. But there are pediatric adapted sensors that are smaller than adult ones. But even the adult ones can be used on the baby's ears and or on their toes clumped together, and you can still get a fairly reliable reading. Is this baby having a severe asthmatic episode or severe respiratory episode or not? Do you need to take this person out of your home at 2 o'clock in the morning to go and seek medical attention? And do you need to burden the already in crisis government hospitals right across Jamaica?
I thank you for spending your time on that. And those who didn't hear is not the lack of your repetition. And we thank you for that, to underscoring that. But let's move now to what the world, and if you say the world and you follow North America, that they are hoping on hope that this new COVID-19 vaccine, the series of them that have been approved, will make the difference. What say you of that? We have a group that will come through to assist us.
I am not sounding boastful. I'm not sounding boastful, but I still remember virology to this day. I'm a neurosurgeon. Every properly trained neurosurgeon must be comfortable knowing about viruses because the brain and the spinal cord are repositories for viruses. I was fortunate and blessed to get an honors in virology, microbiology, and pathology way back in 1994 or thereabouts. What I would say is winter viruses always mutate. They do not stay still. In sporting terms, can I use a sporting term?
Sure.
This is what you call a workman forward, a workman with midfielder. This person is constantly moving. You're not playing my type of game where you just stay still and expect the ball to come to you. Or, no disrespect to Chris Gayle, world boss, but Chris Gayle is a man who doesn't like to move his feet too much, but he knows there's a good hand-eye coordination and he can club that ball even on his back foot. But no, coronavirus is not like that. Coronavirus is more like a Brian Lara, quick on his feet, nimble. He's always moving, always changing. So we made a vaccine. When we say we, I'm using the medical establishment in the widest sense. Made a vaccine for a 2019 strain of a winter virus. This vaccine took a year to pass the legislation. And they say that was record. Indeed, it was record. To go through phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial, phase 3 trials. Maybe some other countries like China were ahead of the game. But the fact is, if you make a vaccine for 2019 strain of a winter virus, Michael, how is that vaccine, how is it going to work against a 2021 strain? Because these always mutate. They always shift the goalpost. They do not stay still. They are constantly moving. So as I said from the very beginning, long before the studies from South Africa are now showing that perhaps the Pfizer, Moderna, BioNTech vaccines are not as effective against the new emerged strains. Surprise, surprise. I said that long ago. These winter viruses have been giving scientists hell for the last 50 years or longer. How to make a vaccine that will be effective against them. In fact, the cold was so mild, there was no need to make a vaccine, to try to make a vaccine against it. But the influenza virus was more severe, and hence you got your flu shot, which stands for influenza virus, flu shot, influenza virus. You got that shot every year. Notice you're getting it every year because they're trying to guess which particular strain is going to come about in 2022 cycle of the winter. And they're trying to guess it. But that results in a effectiveness of about 50%. It is not it's not in the Rolls Royce class as measles, mumps, and rubella, as Professor Peter Figueroa will tell us. MMR vaccines, these vaccines, you give them once, maybe twice, and that's it. You walk away, bye. But the flu shot, you have to come back every year, like you take a hypertensive tablet every day. You have to come back every year. And how can a poor country like Jamaica, with our little resources, justify first paying for such expensive vaccines, which the first world rich countries have hoarded, and two, how can we justify knowing fully well that nobody on this earth knows the 10-year, 15-year, 16-year, 20-year side effect of these vaccines? So there are two important questions to ask: the effectiveness and the justification in respect of the side effects. As of 2020, our corona death numbers is about 300, which is minuscule, because by then hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans had coronavirus and did not know. So that gave us a death rate as less than 0.01%. And that is one of the best in the world. Better than the UK, better than Belgium, Sweden, Norway, European countries with highly advanced health systems. Better than France, better than Spain, better than North America, better than Canada, better than Mexico. Our coronavirus case fatality rate less than 0.01%.
Am I
Why?
forced to ask?
Why is that so?
I'm forced to ask, are you saying no vaccination for Jamaicans? That would be your, what do you say as it
This
relates
is
to,
my personal
the
opinion.
COVAX facility as well? That's supposed
Right,
to make it easier for countries like ours.
right. What we should do with that money is to inject it, or a better word, inoculate it, that 8.1 million US dollars, into communities that are seeing 650% increase in murder rates, because they have needs. As I speak to people, they have needs. So we should not be in the line. We're in the wrong lane. We need to go and find our lane. It's like you're in the airport for the first time. I don't know which plane to catch. You're in the wrong. You line up for 2 hours and you realize you're in the wrong lane all this time. There are people in Jamaica who can tell the narrative for you. If you're not a doctor, Dr. Christopher Tufton is not a medical doctor. And to say Andrew Holness is certainly not a medical doctor. None of them are medical doctors. If they are not medical doctors, then they should be open to explanation as to why we should not be spending 8.1 million US dollars on vaccines, which may not work.
But their medical advisors are
changed.
doctors. Their medical advisors are doctors.
Well, I don't want to get into trouble here, but you know, I mean, did they get honors in their virology exam? Did they have problems passing pathology? Did they do it once? Did they do it twice? Did they do it 3 times? Did they have problems in passing medical school exams? I think at this stage, we need to examine your CV a bit more closely. Donald Trump deliberately put a legal stricture that nobody could go back to see his high school transcript to see what were his grades as a student. It was a legal stricture, so we couldn't see if he got an F in English language or F in pathology or virology, so to speak. So you tend to bring people around you who will agree with what you are saying, not what you need to hear.
You're going to get in trouble because you're now questioning the bona fides.
Okay, let me start at the top.
Yes.
The WHO. I have lost every confidence in the WHO. It used to be a highly esteemed organization. In my book, it is all over the place. It took an ophthalmologist by the name of Li Wen Liang. We must never forget his name. Li Wen Liang. Li Wen Liang. And I'll say it one more time. Li, L-I, Wen Liang, W-E-N-L-I-A-N-G. It took an ophthalmologist to alert the world, not the WHO, an ophthalmologist to alert the world of an outbreak of coronavirus, a new coronavirus strain. He didn't call it COVID or co-SARS, whatever, as the WHO they chose to do. It's still a coronavirus. And to tell people to take precautions, and of course, sanitize, etc. I was shocked out of my wits. And to this day, I cannot explain why our chief medical officer of health said to Jamaica that if you do not have any symptoms, you cannot pass on coronavirus. That was said around March 2020. I could not believe it. I honestly could not believe it. I was shocked out of my wits because this goes against every principle of virology and infectious diseases. Every single principle. You cannot possibly expect that you won't have carriers. You have a certain amount of people that are called carriers. I want to take you back to the hospital superbug outbreak in the United Kingdom and in the US in the early 2000s, the superbug outbreaks. These superbug outbreaks were such that you have these bacteria from your skin that were no longer sensitive to penicillin. And so we had to swab everybody's nose and armpits and elsewhere to see if they had this particular bacteria on their skin. And this was carried out methodically from 2000s right up to about 2015. I don't know if they're still doing it now. To finally get, after 15 years, break the back of the MRSA or MRSA bacteria, flesh-eating bacteria illnesses that occurred back then. And you know, the thing is, amongst those people, you had a word that's called carriers. Carriers. They're just there to carry the virus. They don't get sick from it. They're carriers. But guess what carriers can do? They can transport it to you and I, just like coronavirus. So you can become a carrier. You can have coronavirus for months and months and months in your nose. You can test positive this week, test negative next week, test positive the following week, test positive a week later, but you're not sick, you know. Understand that you're not sick. You're a simple vehicle, like a piece of paper, carrying the virus around. So to say to Jamaica, the WHO and our chief medical officer, to say to Jamaica that the reason why the rest of the passengers on the British airplane, that Sentinel plane in March last year, where the first corona case was detected, why the rest of the passengers were not quarantined and swabbed and is because, well, if they had no clinical symptoms, then you're not going to pass on coronavirus. And that was a very, very dangerous mistake to make. So the WHO said it, our chief medical officer said it, and I think, you know, when trillions of dollars have been lost off the economy, when billions of dollars have been lost from the Jamaican economy, we can't allow people to not come back to us, to explain to us why they said what they said. Likewise, doctors who said there would be 60,000 corona deaths because they're a professor of public health at a university, or they're a senior family physician, that there'll be 45,000 corona deaths. And even though that family physician wore masks, face shields, and sanitized and social distance, he still was surprised that he got coronavirus, which is a 0.125 micrometer particle. Point is, coronavirus is highly infectious. And I'd like to humbly default to King Gustav of Spain, who says, all measures have failed. Whether you try Donald Trump's strategy, Justin Trudeau's strategy, Boris Johnson's strategy, Angela Merkel's strategy, all of them are in the same boat. That's why politicians have to be very careful how they put themselves in the front line of a complex medical topic. This is not something that they caused. Politicians didn't cause coronavirus, but by their actions, somehow they are linked with its spread. Now, billions, $4 billion Jamaican dollars was spent rapidly trying to isolate a 0.125 micrometer particle. What if 2 billion of that was given to the police force, and the other 2 billion was given to the inner city communities that are stressed? As I spoke to a friend of mine who has knowledge and lives within, what the people have right now, Michael, are needs. They have needs, Michael, not wants. They have needs. They need to eat at least one meal a day. They're struggling. They need to have electricity. They need to have water. They need to have some amount. I think a telephone is a need these days because it can save lives. Making one phone call can save a life. So people actually have needs because of the draconian approach to a winter virus in a hot all year round country. And again,
if not the vaccine, are you then saying herd immunity, natural immunity will do the job?
Herd immunity 100% is going to happen, whether we like it or not. It is happening as we speak. Remember the 15,000 that you may pose as positive cases? That's just a drop in the bucket, Michael. The Ministry of Health said it, Dr. Bisesa McKenzie said it, that what they're doing is a sampling, just like Bill Johnson and Don Anderson. They sample and then project from that sample how many hundreds of thousands likely will vote. Well, in this case, how many hundreds of thousands are likely to have had the coronavirus? So you'll have people say, no, I don't have coronavirus. No, I don't have coronavirus. Really? You actually do have coronavirus. You had it, you got over it, and you did not know. And I like to use the example of Major General Anderson, the chief of police, the commissioner of police. By the time he got a positive test result, a month after the test was done, I mean, he has practically no symptoms. He's fit, he's militarily fit, he's from a military background. And so he's not at the risk from dying from coronavirus. So our best vaccine from coronavirus is the same vaccine, quote unquote, that will help us with our diabetes, or hypertension, or high cholesterol, our stress and anger management. Believe you me, Michael, stress and anger management is at an all-time high in Jamaica. It's at an all-time high. We simply do not have enough social workers, enough psychologists, enough psychiatrists to deal with the tremendous burden that people are going through. But exercise has been categorically 100% shown to be as effective, if not more effective, than antidepressant tablets to control depression arising from whatever cause, including COVID. I mean, my neighbor in England, you know, she just told me her dear friend just hung himself, leaving his wife, 11-year-old and 6-year-old child, 50 years old. I mean, this was just enough. It was just, he had a business, got into trouble. And this was, it was just too much. He couldn't take it anymore.
Am I hearing you,
one
Doc?
suicide affects 130 families severely on average. One single suicide. Dr. Donovan Thomas, Choose Life, he will eloquently tell you about this. But a single suicide runs deep,
Yes,
deep and wide.
Am I hearing Dr. Roger Hunter tell JNN and the nation that exercise is the greatest vaccine against COVID-19? Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to be sure.
No, not at all. Not at all, Michael. What you're hearing is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's not only about COVID. COVID is not our elephant in the room. It's not our elephant in the room. I see my colleague, Dr. Sanjay Gupta in America, telling us about the benefits of exercise yesterday. And you know what he was talking about, Michael? Sanjay, who I'm sure most Jamaicans would know, the CNN medical correspondent, and a neurosurgeon like myself, who I know. Sanjay was saying it actually helps to reduce Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's. Do you know how hard it is to care for someone with Alzheimer's? If you can make their cardiovascular system as healthy as possible, as smooth as possible, you can help to reduce neuronal damage, the consequences. So exercise is crucial, not just for corona. It is crucial for high blood pressure, for diabetes, for cholesterol, for mental health of all forms, for the shut-ins, for the homeless people, for the people who are isolated from society, for the professor at the university who is so lonely at the top and nobody wants to talk to that professor because one word could get them into trouble. And the first professor of surgery in this country, the first professor of surgery in Jamaica. Let us remember his name and pause. Professor Ovens. I think it's Jerry Ovens. Do you know how he died? He died from suicide because he was lonely in Jamaica. They were brought down from the colonial powers to set up a branch of the University College of London here in Jamaica. But the loneliness, there's a poem, and I hope you can find it for me and share it with me, by Andrew Salke. The loneliness, it would kill you. When you're in a big city and the loneliness take you, oh my God. When you're up at 10th floor at one of these tower blocks and you are just seeing square walls around you and you can't open the window, loneliness will kill you. So guess what will help? Exercise. Exercise is a big deal. It is huge. It is huge, and it is there. We can do it at our bedside. We can do it outside. And I'd prefer if it's done outside rather than inside, because outside we get some vitamin D as we're doing it. So exercise doesn't only protect us against coronavirus, it protects us against all the major elephants in the room. And it helps discover things for us by doing proper exercise. So I welcome Sanjay Gupta's voice to this message of exercise. I welcome him. And, you know, I would like it to be echoed loud and clear that exercise is not a Cinderella. It's a main thing. If you only do 200 of this every day, push your hands up 200 times each morning and 200 times each evening. That alone will add years to your life. A simple thing as that. Some people, not even a finger they would want to lift because they're so in pain, but you have to break the pain barrier. Also, exercise helps to reduce your requirements on pain medication. We have an epidemic of opioid crisis in America that's killing people. It is so sad. The PTSD is coming back from Afghanistan. They're relying on Percocet, OxyContin. I see where Purdue has filed for bankruptcy, morphine, heroin. A program of exercise can help to reduce drug dependency and drug addiction, and not just antisocial drugs, but also even regular pain meds by getting you exercise, getting you moving in the right way. So for instance, I'm a spinal surgeon. So I tell patients don't jump, but you can do the treadmill. You can do the steptronics or the step cycle. You can do the push-ups or the planks, but you must not do sit-ups. Sit-ups are bad for you, bad for your lower back. You mustn't do running. Running is bad for your hips and your knees. Eventually you will pay for the price. I would encourage cycling. You know, my colleague, Dr. Wayne Palmer, I see him pleading to the nation, begging the powers that be to allow cycling to resume. Cycling is not a contact sport, but cycling is an extremely beautiful sport because it takes you places that you would not normally go. So you have the combination of physical, metabolic wellness, losing that fat from around your tummy, and also the scenic beauty of seeing things that are beautiful, seeing things that are wonderful, that helps to release the endorphins in your brain, the 5-hydroxytryptamine, so that you less rely on painkillers. So exercise, 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 not overdoing it, but 30 minutes of exercise every day will go a far way to keeping you alive and keeping us, the doctors, away.
And that's a free prescription you're giving, Doc. You have given us 2 free prescriptions this morning. You have given us the oxygen saturation machine.
Oxygen saturation meter, O2 sat, oximeter, OXIMETER, O2 sat. Please,
and
please
you have given
get one.
You have given us the need for us, not Jamaica to move, but you as individual to move. Free prescription, nothing right, nothing side. I'm going to put you on the spot now because you're going to have to defend your life. Because when a lot of persons hear you, they say, no, sir. We have over 250 people dead from the corona. We have vaccinations that are now just doing literally world tests as opposed to the limited tests in sampling and getting through the different thing. And you have avoided the issue of the risk management. You have not given the vaccine enough time. You have literally said to Jamaicans, walk away from all of that. Don't take the vaccination. don't take, don't, you know, what say you? Is
I'm
this,
saying,
yes.
I'm saying to the pauperized country of Jamaica that needed 500 million US dollars from the IMF in June. Never mind that we have a PhD as a finance minister. Doesn't matter. Matters not. The World Bank says we have to pay back every cent. And guess what, Michael? We're going to need to go back to them soon because Jamaica is not earning our keep at the moment. We're simply not earning our keep. So we have now gone way over balance. We have tipped the balance to now where there is an absence of livelihoods. We can't make a living. You can't make a living, then the crime is going to go up. The people who live in crime-infested areas, the blood pressure go up, their sugar go up, they're going to get stroke, heart attack, they're going to get cancer from the stress, the constant stress, the constant high levels of adrenaline in their bloodstream, the constant high levels of cortisol in their bloodstream, depressing their immune system, making them at higher risk for heart attack, stroke, and cancer. The elephants in our rooms. Over 15,000 Jamaicans versus 300. All lives matter. All lives matter. We, however, if you say at a policy level, and I'm blessed to be associated with Medical Strategies Limited, which is a policy think tank which has been operating for 5 years now, surrounding, unlocking barriers to healthcare, barriers to health in Jamaica. But as a policy think tank, are you going to be spending 8.1 million US dollars on to vaccinate to save 300 lives? Or are you going to give the the vaccine against the 1,800 being murdered? Murders are preventable. When I lived in England, I didn't feel the stress. I didn't feel anything like this. And guess what? They don't grill their houses. They don't grill their houses at all. And the fence, and many homes, there's no fence between them. So we have to look at the other side of the coin. That the response is hysterical. Jody and Ferron has died. The baby in the mommy's tummy has died. The father who was stabbed to death has died. The man who hung himself in Clarendon has died. The lady who drowned in Portland, she has died. Several, I can go on and on and on. Many examples of people who, because of the protocol or the hysteria-infused mediated responses that had contributed to their deaths. So if I go to KPH with my tummy hurting me now, and I think it's an appendicitis, guess what I have to wait for? One guess. You know what I have to wait for?
Yes.
A COVID test, which is not made in Jamaica, by the way. COVID tests are not made in Jamaica. They're all imported. I have to wait for a negative COVID test. You know what 24 hours can mean for an appendicitis?
Oh,
It
yes.
ruptures and it can kill you.
Yes.
Right now, one of my former colleagues from Basildon in Essex, I didn't work at that hospital, but we're in the regional area of East London, extends into Essex. Mr. David Salou was put in jail for 2.5 years for delay in recognizing a perforation to the gut. And that delay resulted in multi-organ failure from which that man never survived. And the judge, in his declaration, said that Mr. Salou deserved to serve I don't agree with what the judgment, deserved to serve time because of the delay in the treatment that contributed to the man's death. On appeal, and I'm very happy for Mr. Salou that he was exonerated, but by then all the damage was done. So he was well in his 60s at the end point of his career to retire and was put into jail for 2.5 years. And we can say, sometimes that reflects systemic structural issues in a society. Why is England making examples, but so far the examples seem to have a certain color or shade?
Mm-hmm.
Why was a bar lowered for Mr. David Salou? But time is an important factor, Michael, as we saw with Jody and Ferron. To deliver a baby in distress, I, as a neurosurgeon, will step back to allow an obstetrician to go ahead of me because there's fetal distress. Operating theater time is heavily guarded, is watched. You know, when you watch something, you watch the theater list,
Yes.
and you don't want nobody going in front to skip you.
Yes.
But guess what? The obstetricians have to skip us, because in 5 minutes that baby can develop hypoxic permanent brain damage, and you are living with a child for the rest of your life with hypoxic brain damage who is going to be slow learner or no learner, and you have to be worried about the future, what after when you're gone.
Yes. Tell
So,
us, stitching time saves 9.
oh my Lord, brilliant.
To
I
follow
love
up
that.
here as we end up, I get your passion. I don't know if it keeps you up at night or raise
It
your blood
does.
pressure when you
It
see
does.
what's
It
what's
does.
what's going
It does.
on.
Well, it's happening. I have in my own little corner, you know, God bless John Lewis. He says to
Good
say
trouble.
something, do something, good trouble. Say something, do something. What does neurosurgeon know? Not that he got honors in several subjects, including virology and a prize in Europe. What do you know about viruses? Just running his mouth. Well, it's a year since we have this pandemic. I don't see 15,000 dead. And I think by and large, those people who pronounced it upon this land and proclaimed it upon this land based on their own scientific research. That word scientific is abused so much this year. That their scientific research tells them that we are going to get 15 or 45,000 deaths or 60,000 deaths. They need to come to Jamaica and explain to us why not, why it hasn't happened. But, you know, we are in a crisis of mega gigantic proportions, Michael. Our economy has not been this bad in living memory. I dare say that in living memory. Maybe the 1907 earthquake. We'd have to go back. We have crashed education. We have crashed the livelihoods of a lot of people who only start to earn after 10 o'clock in the night. Sports. I have done a lot of work regarding sports, and I'll continue to do it. Sports and entertainment have paid an unfair price in this pandemic. Their particular means of earning have been severely affected more than any others. And that consequentially means that you have athletes who are desperate, they're on the edge. In fact, right now, as we speak, there is a footballer in jail in Jamaica for trying to rob and kill a woman for $2,000. And in the process, she was shot and she died. So sports is having a severe burden to bear. The whole Jamaica is a biosecure venue when you look at our numbers. Look at Haiti. The Washington Post proclaimed, oh, it's going to be bedlam and mayhem when coronavirus hits Haiti. They need to apologize to Haiti. Haiti needs an apology from the Washington Post. And I go on record of saying that. Because Haiti, with 11.12 million people, only had 243 corona deaths, less than Jamaica. You see, you can't hide a corona death. You can't hide a corona death. Like in Nicaragua, where people are just dying on the streets, or Guatemala, where they never had the tests up and running, but they knew that this was a respiratory illness, and so their lungs were filled with fluid. So you could know that you could then do a pathological corona death in that regard. We're not seeing anybody dying on the street in Jamaica. Dr. Morris Guy kept drumming on and on and on about, oh, we're missing corona deaths. We are missing corona deaths. We need to go to the morgues to find them. I know a lot of morticians, they're good people. And they said, well, I asked them, what's killing us? I said, Doc, it's not corona. It's a stroke. It's a cancer and a heart attack. And then way in distant fourth, although it's creeping up this year. So we can't keep our doors open anymore. Creeping up this year is the gun violence. That is what's sending people to med arrest. So we need to be positive about it and grab the opportunities. So these are the opportunities that we would have accrued if we allowed people in, if we opened our borders. We would have one sent a moral word to the world. Michael, which country in the world gave the best, most outstanding response to Ebola crisis?
Okay, you tell
You
me.
know, it has four words, four letters in it, four letters, and it's our closest neighbor. With their little bit of money, Cuba is the #1 country in the world that had a response to Ebola. So Cuba said a statement. Cuba is a powerhouse when it comes on to all things medical. So if there's a Cuban vaccine, I would be prepared to examine it. I don't think it's going to work because the mutant, your vaccination process takes so slow to develop, whether you're communist, whatever you are. It's so slow that the virus always mutates. It's a shiffy boo. It's shift you, gone. So what we have to do is concentrate on getting ourselves metabolically fit. In the last month, I've seen 3 people with low vitamin D levels, and that's me alone. I mean, this is lady with pure velvet midnight dark skin, and her vitamin D levels were like 18, and normally 30 to 100.
Wow.
The other one was
That's from the
15.
sun, isn't he? You should point to get that free.
Yeah, we get that free from going outside. Go outside, not inside. Open the windows. The other policy that we should not miss this opportunity, because a lot was being said of the amount of cranes around Kingston, and never in Jamaica's history have we seen so many cranes in our skyline. So let's be clear. Let's be clear about this. The coronavirus has sent a message that if you keep building ice boxes, and if you get rich and build central AC comfortable environment and live inside all day, you are going to die from coronavirus more so than if you were a poor country like Haiti. If you compare Panama with 4 million people, they have over 3,600 dead from coronavirus. And Panama is a hot country. People haven't really tackled me on Panama, that issue. But it's actually a hot country. Panama is proper hot, but they don't live in the heat. They live in ice boxes, a lot of them. And downtown New City, Panama is like the Manhattan skyline. I was shocked when I was there February last year. I could not believe it. Of course, the obvious thing that I was shocked about is that I had to wait for an hour and a half to see a ship coming through the Miraflores lock. Yes. And that told me what was happening to the global economy, that the global economy was shut down. Normally, you'd see ships coming through that tremendous engineering feat, yes, which Jamaicans or their forefathers, yes, contributed tremendously to the building of the Panama Canal. Every 10 minutes, you'll be seeing a ship coming through the Panama Canal. And that's made Panama very rich. With the wealth that they have received, they have chosen to build tall ice boxes. Tall ice boxes. Now, coronavirus will say, thank you much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, sir. Look at Alarica. What message is it telling us? Are we learning our lessons, or are we copy and paste? Are we trying to get all vaccines and therapeutics, or are we trying to harness the natural God bless factors that we've given? We've been given 3 things: the heat, the year-round heat. We've been given the UV light, and we have been given the humidity. All these 3 factors work in concert to reduce the spread of coronavirus. But not if you stay in your AC room all day. You are going to get into trouble. I see the Ministry of Foreign Affairs building finally being open, and I'm wondering if they have what type of AC unit they have inside there. Because if a single worker has coronavirus in that building, the AC will circulate that virus right throughout that building. So it's really a challenge to our brothers, our friends, our engineering friends, our architects. How do we build engineering systems surrounding AC units and buildings that you can open the windows, isolate ourselves from the central AC, and not be exposed to a circulating virus. Remember, we need to learn our lessons. There's something called Legionnaire's disease. Legionnaire's disease. This is not new. Legionnaire's disease, it still has outbreaks. It comes about from dirty central AC units, and it kills people. It kills people. So we have no great history in Jamaica of maintaining buildings, whether public sector or private sector. And you just need to look at the Cornwall Regional Hospital to see what I'm saying. But is this an opportunity to say to the contractors who are building those 10 skyscrapers to build them in such a way that each individual household can have their window unit and have their individual control of the AC temperature, rather than a central AC unit that is going to be circulating the virus all the way through? And no matter how you say, oh, we'll build a unit which can kill the virus and that's just trying to, that won't work. We need to open the windows, go outside and get fresh air. That's the lesson from 1918. And there's another lesson that we need to remember from 1918, Michael, and I want you to know this. A very important lesson. There's a lesson that we need to know. What killed 50 million people in the flu pandemic of 1918? That's the other thing that my colleagues misinterpreted. Was not the influenza virus, Michael. The flu pandemic is a misnomer. It's a misnomer. It's not the flu that killed you. It was a post-viral bacterial pneumonia. It was a post-viral bacterial pneumonia. Bacteria are everywhere in our nose, in our mouth, in our throat. The virus comes in, does a little damage, inflammation, and then the bacteria set in. The bacteria have very powerful toxins. They have endotoxins and exotoxins that really destroy the blood vessel lining and cause blood clots. It was Alexander Fleming in 1928 who, after coming back from a summer holiday, realized that his plates were contaminated with a fungus. And that fungus turned out with a fungus that had penicillin. Since penicillin was discovered, it took about 12 years for penicillin to be first used, I think in 1941, from that point of discovery. 12 years, not 1 year, Michael, 12 years. If we did not have antibiotics in 2019, 2020, or 2021, hundreds of millions of people would have died from coronavirus, post-bacterial pneumonias, and sepsis around the world. So antibiotics have a huge role to play. And I see Mia Motley has been assigned as head of the antibiotic resistance task force for the WHO. She has an important job, because a lot of the times what kills you is not having is because your bacteria are resistant to the antibiotics that you're given during COVID. And it's the bacteria that literally turn your lungs into cheese-like necrotizing pneumonias. It literally liquefies, destroys your lungs. It's the bacteria, the flesh-eating bacteria. So we need to be very serious about how we deal with bacterial infection. We need to be respectful how we use antibiotics. But of course, we need the oxygen saturated meters in every household. And we need sports to be reopened in every corner of Jamaica, through the length and breadth, from north to south, from Negril Point to Morant Point. Every form of sports need to be reopened, whether it's swimming, cycling, walking, every sport, because that keeps us metabolically fit. It keeps us mentally balanced and mentally well. And it reduces our risk of coronavirus by getting us from inside and going outside. Lockdowns have not worked, Michael. Lockdowns, categorically, we can say they have not worked.
Well, I've started mine, so at least I have 196 to go, since I must do 200 per day. I want to thank you for your prescription, and we'll do this again, because there will be much more opportunities as the vaccine reaches Jamaica and we see what the outturns are. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'd just like to say that again, I would just want to put the Philippine, I plead to the authorities, please spend money on the inner cities. The hospitals are bleeding. Speak to the heads of your big hospitals. Speak to them and see what's really stretching their resources. And you'll find out it's not coronavirus. But again, you're most welcome. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I hope that the hysteria that still lingers, the hysteria for coronavirus, although that has lessened, and I'm grateful to God for the small role that I have played in reducing hysteria. But there's also hysteria around the vaccine. But that is not necessarily unfounded because we simply don't know in 5, 10, 15, 20 years what's going to happen. And about 3 doctors have already died from receiving the vaccine. 1 nurse has died. Several people in nursing homes have died in Canada, in Norway, and elsewhere. So it's not a benign vaccine. It's not a simple matter. And it won't work year after year. You have to keep getting vaccinated after vaccination. So again, I'm very humbled to be able to focus people's minds on what really are the opportunities that have been given to us through post-colonialism, post-colonial reality, having an island in the sun, a true paradise, a crown in the jewel, a true crown in the jewel. And coronavirus, what is it called? A crown. The name for coronavirus is a crown. Well, Jamaica is a crown in a jewel. And it's time that we are more bold, less timid, and say to the world that it is not because of our measures, but it's because of our low or high temperatures or high humidity and the UV and the long days of light. That's the primary factor why we have not been overrun by coronavirus, not because of any sophisticated bureaucratic government response. I mean, as we speak, St. Joseph's Hospital is still housing people who are during community spread. How can you have St. Joseph's Hospital being locked down with people, say you're isolating COVID when there's community spread? Even the Golden Age home, how many Golden Agers have died from coronavirus? And the mustard seed, practically none. We need to stop scaring us. We need to be more bold, and we need to summon the spirit of the non-aligned movement. I'm sure Andrew Michael Holness will know that spirit, the spirit of the non-aligned movement, that we can tell our narrative. We cannot expect CNN or BBC to tell our narratives for ourselves. We must be bold. We must be thinkers. We must be critical thinkers and say to ourselves, and be honest, if there are no antibiotics, hundreds of millions will be dead. These are the simple things that we need to mention. And open the windows, go outside, exercise, be positive about life, and stop engendering violence within our hearts.
All right. Thank you very much, Doc.